Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Rosie, and today we are going to be diving into some deathbed confessions, the spiritual reparations edition. Strap in tight, because oh my god, these stories are insane. Okay, insane. So don't forget, I will be listing all of the creators' videos. I will be listing all of the creators' handles in the description box below, just in case you want to go onto their channel and give them some love and see whether you vibe with them. You might want to follow them, but I want to give them their due because these are their stories that I am sharing with you guys. So I will be doing that, but guys, just get some popcorn.
Okay, quick story that has me literally shaking right now. So for context, I drive trucks and I stop at this Denny's to grab a coffee because I'm addicted to caffeine. I went in there to get my coffee to go and then I walked to the bathroom, but as I'm walking to the bathroom, it's this old guy sitting to the left with about 12 people that's celebrating his 89th birthday. I got a call from my dispatcher and he was like, yo, you can chill, no rush, they're not ready for the freight, so you can relax a little bit. Sat down, ordered some food, so now I'm sitting like across from the guy that's celebrating his birthday. Time goes by, I'm down there at the end of my meal and everybody that basically came to celebrate with him had left, so now it's just him and his wife. So as I get up to go wash my hands, I see him and I give him a smile. I'm like, happy birthday, young man, 89. That's a lot of memory to have. Here's the thing, I don't even know why I said that. He could have had Alzheimer's. I'm not even sure what I meant by that. Like, but that's what I said. And he said, well, thank you, young man. And he smiled and he kind of just stared at me, and I just walked back there and washed my fucking hands. So I come back and his wife is gone. She's talking to some other lady that goes to the same church they do. And he sees me, he says, come here, come here, come here. And I said, yes. And he said, there are way too many things that I wish I could forget. And I said, yeah, man, you make it to damn near 100 years old. I'm pretty sure you got a handful of regrets. And he looked at me with the most serious look ever and said, you have no idea. Well, now I'm curious. Do tell. He said, you know, I used to be a firefighter through the 60s and 70s. I said, that's what's up. That's a very commendable job. And he said, yeah, it should be. He said the 60s and 70s was a different time in every way possible. You know that, right? And I'm just like, yeah, no shit. He said back in those times, I was a way different man, and who knew that we'd get to the point where we are in society today and I'd be feeling the way I'm feeling about the decisions that I made back in those times. So I'm like, man, if you won't fucking tell me, bro. So right before he took a very long pause, he looked at me and said, back in those times, it was very common for firefighters that looked like me to leave people that looked like you in burning houses and buildings and horrible situations just to say they couldn't get to us. He said more times than he'd like to admit, he would hear screaming black people and children in burning buildings and houses and apartments and stores and cars, and he would literally just pretend he didn't hear it. He said his last time doing it was when he made eye contact with the baby that he deliberately went into a building to save and deliberately didn't. And he said that was the last time he did it, and he quit that year. He said the nightmare still hasn't stopped. He still hasn't forgiven himself, and therapy helps, but it's still a living nightmare to have those memories. And I guess that shit just shocked me so much, because when it came to firefighters, I never thought of them like that. Like when it came to like police officers, lawyers, and judges, and everybody else, we knew they didn't give a fuck. Especially police officers, we knew they didn't give a fuck about us. But I don't know why that didn't click to me that no, it was everybody that hated us. Everybody had a hand in deliberately making our lives worse. But when I calmed down from being mad enough to want to pull the plug on his ass, I thought about it and I was like, of course they did this. Of course they did this shit. Duh. Like, why was I even shocked? Like, of course. But it is something that I cannot think about for too long, because that visual of you fake going to save somebody and not saving them because of the color of their skin and the entire 911 understanding, because oh yeah, you couldn't get Jamal, oh well, just another one gone. Like that shit, I don't know. The conversation ended with him staring at me, making that last statement, and me staring back at him, telling him I gotta finish my route. I hope you enjoy the rest of your birthday. The last thing he said is, I hate myself for it. And I said, my boss is calling. I hope you enjoy the rest of your birthday. I've had so many people hit me up in my DMs to tell me that that shit is still going on. So many 911 workers to tell me, so many nurses, so many cops, so many people tell me that that shit is still going on. And it's weird because it's like, you ever find out some information you already knew the answer to? It's like, yeah, I know that, but to hear it out loud from people that know it for sure is way different. I don't know why he chose to tell me, but I'm pretty sure I'm not the only black person that he stopped and told this shit to. Just don't understand how somebody can be so evil and just one day not be. How a society can give birth to and breed so many heartless, soulless people for them to just wake up one day and be like, maybe we made a mistake. And this is just one of the few of them that feel like they actually made a mistake. A lot of them feel like it was nothing wrong with what they were doing and wish everything was still the fucking same. Here's the thing. This incident happened over 3 months ago. I recorded that video 3 months ago. It's been in my draft that long. I didn't want to fucking post it, but for whatever reason, I could not delete the shit. So the other day when I was going through all my drafts and I was looking and I was going through and trying to figure out what to post, I kept seeing that shit, and I swear to God, something said, post it now. Post it now. Because I usually just delete them after a couple days if I don't post them. But something said, post it now. Right fucking now. And I did. And I really wish he didn't tell me this shit, because me being cursed with the burden of that information did nothing but fuel my imagination, and now I can't get the images out my fucking head. But also, we have images of racist white firefighters spraying black people with the fire hose on the hardest pressure, ripping our fucking skin off. And this is shit that we can Google. We can look that up on YouTube. Then why is it so hard to hear that they let us burn? Why does that feel like a different level of evil? Why is that still so surprising? Like, but then again, it's not. But yeah.
Disclaimer, this is not my story. I may forget bits and pieces of the story as I go along, because this all went down last summer. Basically, on Twitter, there was a nurse that was saying the amount of times I've heard a racist confess something heinous to me while they were in hospice care, I've lost count. And other nurses took the screenshot and replying to it on Nurses of TikTok, and were making videos of how racist people were on their deathbeds and were explaining how their patients were begging for forgiveness and stuff like that. Trigger warning to this story. So the story goes, a nurse was attending to a patient who was in hospice care. The patient then confesses to the girl that she basically lied and was envious of a little black girl in her family because the little black girl had a cute dress. The patient also admits that she lied on the brother of the black family, basically saying that the little boy touched her. And you know how that song and dance goes. She went to the community, started crying, the works and everything, and the community got worked up and went to the people's house. And so the people rolled up on the black family, burned their house to the ground, hung the little boy, chopped off his private parts as punishment. And she can still remember the flames of the house. After that, the patient tells the girl, or the nurse basically, not to leave her side because she sees a little black boy in the corner of her room staring at her. And the girl basically went, it's above me now, it's out of my control. Somebody said it was on Reddit, the Deathbed Confessions, and basically there were CNAs, nurses, and staff basically retelling tales of these racist people that were on their deathbed confessing to heinous crimes. There was one where, of course, cops were saying, you know, I pulled over people just out of spite and all that kind of stuff. But then the women's were like, they were a part of some heinous mess. Like, another significant one was another patient who was on her deathbed, of course, and was a nurse. And she admitted to killing a bunch of black babies. She was a labor and delivery nurse. Some would be a feel good of like the wife finally leaving an abusive relationship and, you know, magically they husbands got sick. But then the ones that were like jaw to the floor, people were wilding, and they're still, like, their descendants are maybe 50, 60 years old. It just made me really sick to my stomach reading some of these stories and hearing nurses my age talk about it. And I wish I could tag the person who it was, but it made the news. It was really, like, it was big.
Does not. Oh my God. Oh my God.
This older man was like 90, he was 91, and he always had this like brown burlap sack, like leather looking sack, right? And whenever I would ask him about it, he was like, oh, it was just one of my, it was like great, it was a few greats down the line, right? And he said it was like a family tradition to pass it on to the son. He was like, but I never had a son, I only had daughters, so I'd take it with me to my grave. So time comes, man finds out he has maybe 2 to 3 weeks left to live. And he like sitting there doing the normal daily routine, taking care of himself. He was like, well, you always ask me about this bag. It was actually the skin of one of my great whoever's slave. And it's been passed down for generations. Alright, this was one of the more interesting ones, because there was this guy who was terrified of me taking care of him the entire time that I worked there. So when his like official hospice announcement was made and he had maybe 2 months to live, I believe it was, he had told me why he was terrified of me taking care of him. He said it was because I looked like one of the kids that his dad and his brothers killed in front of him. And I had the exact same face as that kid. And every time he saw me, he thought it was somebody coming back for revenge for him. I, of course, had to report this to my supervisor, and then they took me off of taking care of him for the remainder of his time. And they monitored him a lot. And there would be some days where I'd have to cover shifts in there, and he would just be utterly terrified by the sight of me. That guilt runs really strong with them. I've gotten this comment a lot, and yes, there's a whole procedure. You write down every detail they give you, and then police reports are filed. They're reported to the higher ups. They usually die before any like real prosecution can go through. But if they have like any leads that can help with old cases, it does help. But I mean, what can you do to that person? Families are usually informed right after they're kicked out of the facility and have to be in a hospital until they pass. But I haven't worked there in like 6 years. The facility got shut down. They were sued. There was a whole class action lawsuit. Hell of us got paid out for like emotional distress and a lot of other things. But yeah, there was a lot going on there.
When your dad was chief of police there, he come home and told me he knew three or four guys that was supposedly good citizens, but they was in the KKK, and he told me their names. I'm not going to tell their names. I think they're still alive. They may be dead.
Who are they?
I ain't gonna put this name out there.
Good.
You're too close to our
Who?
Tragedy's husband's daddy. It's the one. He was postmaster. But your daddy found how he found out. He went up and went through the trash.
So the Jacksons?
No, his name wasn't that. Yeah, maybe it was that. Yeah, I guess it was.
And what happened?
The other one was Earl Poe, and his boy was a basketball player. He used to come scouting out with Tony when Tony was real little.
Okay, but what happened with what Dad said?
Your dad got suspicious of him because these 3 or 4 guys was always getting together, and he told me that he went up there in the trash barrels by the post office. He dug out all the mail that he saw there where they was getting their mail and just put it in that trash can. And he got the mail out and read it. And that's how he found out they was with the KKK.
And what did he do?
Nothing. You didn't do nothing to them guys.
Why?
They was good guys there.
I've literally watched all the stitches to this video, but this story that I'm about to tell today, even though it happened years ago, still gives me chills, and I feel like it has a lot to do with why I quit my job. So I used to work in long-term care, for those of you that don't know, pretty much a nursing home. I was a certified nursing assistant out of high school. This was my first big girl job, okay? So when I first started, I didn't know a lot about the different types of shifts, but there's pretty much 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. I worked the 7 to 3, which was 7 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As time went on, I slowly started to transition to 3 to 11 to work around my college courses. But every now and then I would pick up an 11 to 7 shift. It didn't take long before I started working there where people were telling me about this one particular resident that had an issue with people of a certain color coming into his room. I didn't have too much interaction with this resident because, like I said, I only worked 7 to 3, and you didn't have to do a lot for him. Just go in and check on him and make sure he was okay. Bring him his food tray. Every now and then he might ask you for help to go to the bathroom, but that was about it. I had heard that this resident could get kind of nasty sometimes. I also heard that he had dementia, so he was like seeing stuff. And I also remember going in his room a couple times and seeing all of the mirrors in his room covered up. This is gonna come back later. So on my first 11 to 7, we'll call this nurse Patty. Patty pulled me aside and she was like, hey, this is the list of people, pretty much doing a report for when I first, clocked in, starting my shift. She told me who I had, who was total assist, which I had to do everything for, and who I could pretty much, let. So I noticed that this list had this certain patient's number on it, this certain resident's number on it. His room number was on there. But instead of it saying, just limited assistance or whatever, it was like total assist. So I asked, I'm like, I know I have him during the day and I just go in and check on him and make sure he's okay. If he rings the call light, I'll go in. But other than that, that's about it. When did he become a total assist? So she proceeds to tell me that the night before, he got so scared and so frantic and thought something was in his room that he jumped out of his bed and fell on the floor and did something to his hip. So at this point, currently, he's a total assist, meaning I have to go in, I have to check on him, I have to do everything for him. I said, cool, no problem. I start doing my rounds, I start checking on my people, passing out ice water, changing people, as I normally do. Literally not even 15 minutes into my shift, his call light is on. I go in, I make sure everything's okay. As soon as I get in, I kid you not, this man is literally in the fetal position. I walk up to him and I ask him if everything's okay. Obviously, when I walk up to him, I'm very careful because, like I stated before, he did not like people of my color coming into his room. During the day, he would make a big deal out of this. Like, if he could get a nurse or a nursing assistant of a different color, he definitely would. He did not pay that any mind. He literally jumped straight into, they're in here, they're after me, please help me. I'm looking like, who is they? He's like, you don't see that little boy behind you? No, I can't say that I do, sir. So it took me literally 15 minutes, and by the grace of God, I was able to calm this man down. We're going to call him Mr. Johnson. After I calmed Mr. Johnson down, I left out of the room, and I went and did my rounds like usual. Literally, not even 10 minutes later, he's back on the call light. I said, okay, maybe he's got to go to the bathroom or something. I don't know. So I went in, checked. This time when I went in the room, I noticed that the room was extremely cold. Extremely cold. When I went in there earlier, it was not cold like that. Now, the nursing home, that nursing home in particular was a little colder on the graveyard shift. But when I tell you it was cold to the point where I could see my breath cold. At this point, not only is he in the fetal position, but he is also under the covers and he is also crying. So I walk up to him. I lift the cover up. I look under the cover. Again, he's sitting under there. We make immediate eye contact and he's like, help me, please help me. So I'm trying to calm him down because whatever he's seeing, I'm just not seeing it. So I'm like, Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna need for you to cooperate with me. I'm gonna need for you to tell me what's going on so I can better assist you and we can get through this shift together. At this point, I'm doing what I've been taught to do for somebody that's going through a dementia or Alzheimer's crisis, which is what I was told that he had. He calms down a little bit and he literally just starts talking. And when I tell you this got crazy quick, it got crazy quick. So he's telling me that when he was younger, about in his 20s or 30s, he was married to a young woman. We're going to call her Maggie. Him and Maggie had just bought a farm. It was literally just him and Maggie. And before you knew it, Maggie got pregnant. Back then, it literally wasn't uncommon to have people of color hired as help to help you on the farm, to help you raise kids, whatever the case may be. This was post-slavery, but people was very much still feeling entitled to doing whatever they wanted to do to people of color. So that's the time frame we in. He tells me that months go down the line, whatever. He goes and he wakes up early one morning. He sees that his wife is a little uncomfortable. She tells him like maybe the baby's coming or whatever. He doesn't think nothing of it. He goes out, get on his tractor, and he does his farmer work. He has a farmhand named Tommy. Tommy is a black man, okay? Around lunch, he's guessing is when his wife went into labor while he was still out in the field. His wife called her mother-in-law, which was Mr. Johnson's mom, her sister-in-law, and his brothers came as well. Everybody's making sure that everything's going okay. The baby is finally born at some point. When the baby is born, I guess everybody in the room looked around at each other and realized that this baby was not in no way, shape, or form white. The brothers immediately take the baby and they go outside. His mom sits there with her and they snatch this baby and they take the baby outside. Meanwhile, all this is going on. Him and Tommy are still out in the field. They took this baby out into a body of water, and I will not be saying what they did to this baby, but you can only imagine for the time period. Him and Tommy finally wrap up their work for the day and he heads back to the house. When he gets inside the house, he sees his wife sitting there with his mother. His wife is crying. His mom's just sitting there irritated and pissed off. He asks what's going on, and that's when she gives him the whole rundown that your wife was pretty much sleeping with your field hand, and this is the situation that you're in. So he asks, where's the baby? And the mom says, your brother's taking care of it. Don't worry about it. You need to figure out what you're going to do with her. Meanwhile, this is going on. His brothers have went and got Tommy out of the field. The things that they did to Tommy, again, I cannot describe it here on TikTok, but just imagine the torture and everything that he went through. They literally just left him there in that field. They left him there in the middle of the field. This man proceeds to tell me that when he finally figures out what happened and what his brothers did, they literally acted like nothing ever happened. And every night, Tommy and his son will come and visit him like clockwork. At this point, when I tell you the chills are running up my spine, literally every hair on my body is sticking up. I don't know what to say. I'm like, when they say frozen in fear, I was frozen in fear. Because it's like, as soon as he told me that story, I could pick up on what was in the room. Before, I couldn't pick up on what it was, but I could immediately feel something else in the room with us. After he told me the story, I finally got him to calm down and he went to sleep. He slept for literally a couple hours, and at this point, we're at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like clockwork, he hits that call light again. I go back in. I remember walking into the room and all of the sheets were taken off of the mirrors, which I thought was very strange because he wanted his mirrors covered up for a reason. I went over to Mr. Johnson and I touched him to make sure that he was okay, and this man was ice cold. He had died. As I went to leave the room to go contact a nurse, oh my God, I'm getting chills. I'm literally passing by this mirror, and as I'm headed out, on my left is the mirror. I turn and look in the mirror, and behind me, to the far wall of Mr. Johnson's room, I see a taller figure, and I see a shorter figure standing beside this taller figure that I would say is probably about the height of a 5-year-old child. I have never seen nothing like that in my life, ever. And I cannot explain the amount of fear that ran through my body, but I got out of that room so quick, I will tell you that. The crazy part is that when the nurse came in, we could not understand how these mirrors got uncovered. Even the one in the bathroom was uncovered. The one in his room was uncovered. Again, this is a man that just hurt his hip yesterday. There's no reason why he should have been out of bed taking these blankets off this mirror, and I know he wouldn't have done it anyway. Also, the fact that she felt like he had been dead for longer than I said he had. But again, I had just talked to Mr. Johnson. I had literally just talked to him. So I don't understand how a dead man talks, but maybe y'all can let me know. And when I tell you, baby, I only lasted 3 more days after that. I didn't sleep for days. I said, I'm not coming back. Y'all ain't gotta worry.
There was one time while working as a home health nurse, I had a customer who would always talk to something or someone in an old rocking chair that sit in the corner of his house. Now, the first several times, I just thought dude was delusional or suffering from schizophrenia or something. Then one day, he started crying and begging for forgiveness, saying, I don't know how many times I have to say I'm sorry. I told them where you were buried. Now, at this time, I'm looking at dude like, so I asked, who is he talking to and what happened? And he told me a story of him playing with his black best friend in Mississippi secretly because his dad was a member of the KKK, in which Theodore Bilbo, he was the governor back then in the 1920s, was a member also. But one day his pops and his buddies caught them. He got slapped across the face, and he told him to never have those N-words at his house. Then his father and his friends beat the little black boy until his chest caved in. He said he heard the bones cracking. Then he said they cracked his head open. Then they buried him near a swamp, and he was told never to tell. And he said that secret and those spirits has haunted him everywhere he has moved. He asked if I could forgive him for all the damage that he's done to black people. Now me, I told him, even though you seem like a cool person and I enjoy working up here with you and your family, but I wholeheartedly cannot and will not. Those are called spiritual reparations.
Y'all got cheated with the Miss Sue story because that music was so goddamn loud. I don't know where the volume adjusted itself because I put it on 10% and it came out at 300. So let's go ahead and just run that back for the people where the music was so distracting that they couldn't even get into the story. So this came from one of my followers named Nova Hans, and she basically told a story about how she worked in the second oldest psych facility in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and she had a patient named Betty, and her roommate name was Sue. One day out of nowhere, Miss Betty said that she wanted to change rooms. Confused by this, of course, Nova was like, why would you want to change rooms? I thought you guys were friends. And Miss Betty politely corrected her and was like, we are not friends. Okay, we are associates at best. And then proceeds to tell Nova the reason why she wants to change her room is because of the black woman that's been visiting them every night at 10 p.m. like clockwork. So Nova was like, what black lady? Right? And Miss Betty says, listen, it's a black woman that comes here to visit Miss Sue. She is a young woman in her 20s, dressed very nicely, except she has a noose around her neck, her eyes are missing, and her face is swollen. She also says that the night before she had a terrible nightmare. She knows what Miss Sue did to this young lady, and basically that the young lady let her know that she was coming to collect rent. Okay? And Miss Betty didn't want any parts of it. So they agreed and they moved her room. Once they got Miss Betty out of the room, the spiritual reparations commenced. Okay? I'm going to insert the video again. Hopefully you guys can hear it because I was shook. Okay? You cannot tell me that you don't pay for the shit you do in life whenever you about to be unalive. Okay?
I wanted to kind of do a partial video response, even though my story is in the comments. It's a lot of nuance to that story. So this is like the follow-up to that. So where I left off was that night, Miss Sue is screaming, like I said in the comments, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Now, I worked 11A to 11P. So I was there. Me and the team were there to hear her screaming, right? So we all run down to the room to see what's going on. Miss Sue in there fighting for her whole life. Like her whole life. Hands is swinging everywhere. So we kind of jump on Miss Sue to kind of stop her from screaming. And she's like, let me go, let me go. They're coming to drag me to hell. And we all jump back like, what the fresh hell is this happening right now? And we're like, what is going on? And she says, in her hysteria, still swinging at the air. She's swinging at the air. She says, and it's giving me chills because I clearly remember her saying, I'm going to hell because I killed this girl. Excuse me? Little Southern white lady? What you just say? She's swinging, like swinging at the air, like who, what, they, them was coming for her ass. And it was nothing we could do about it. It's literally nothing we could do. We just watched in horror. And then Stu let out this blood curdling, like, it wasn't a wail, it wasn't a scream, it was a sound I had never heard before and pray I never have to hear again. And then it went quiet. And she fell back in the bed. Didn't she have a massive heart attack? Sue had a massive heart attack. That young lady, that black girl came, and whoever else was involved came and got Sue ass that night. I said, you know what? I don't think I'm going to stay in Psych. But I ended up staying in Psych. Yeah, so that's really the end of that story. All right, y'all, bye.
I asked for spooky stories. You guys delivered in the comments. And some of the stories, I'll let you read them for yourself. Mama Bear 1845. I do in-home hospice. The scariest thing, I'm washing the patient in the bed and he pointed behind me. I turned around and there was a black woman in all black. She was beaten and her clothes were torn. I lost it in my head, kept cleaning, looking behind me. After 3 minutes, she was gone. Came every night till he died. The ultimate dash. Girl, I worked as a CNA. There was an elder W man, and he would talk crazy about 2 black boys sitting at his table watching him, always side-eyeing him. He did something to those boys, shaking my head. Miss T. Sweets. I'm sorry if I said it wrong, girl. When I was 14 and my granny was in hospice, I had an experience with her roommate. It was in the 80s. I'll never forget. My granny shared a room with an old white woman, and my granny kept saying, I need them to get me out of this room with her. I am sensitive and been able to see and talk to the dead, even as a small child. Well, me and my mom went to visit her. When we got in the building and began to walk to her room, I could hear the patients crying out. In some, I would see the spirits standing there in their room. When I got to Granny's room, my stomach dropped to my toes. And when I walked in, I could see a young black female in the corner and her roommate was losing it. I looked at my granny and she said, you see her too, don't you? I said, yes, Granny. My granny asked me, how did she look? And I told her, she said, yes, that lady heard my voice and came from her side and kept saying, tell her, I am sorry, screaming, tell her, I know you can see her. When I looked up to see where the spirit was, she looked pregnant and had a rope around her neck. It freaked me out. I kept asking her, what did you do? What did you do to her? I ran out of that room so fast and began to cry. I'll never forget that. Granny was stuck in a room with her for a week, and Granny said that the spirit was wearing her out. Look at them spiritual reparations, baby. That lady was evil and told what she did to that poor girl in her sleep. My granny said she didn't feel sorry for her at all. 2 days later, she died. Her last name was Applewhite. I'll never forget it. Part 4 of Spiritual Reparations. Jazz Renee, a lady told me for 2 weeks a colored little girl won't stop playing in my room, and I needed to get her out of there. She would also scream at her. Adrian 87. I'm a believer. I used to hire caregivers/nurses for an agency and always heard the stories. One story in particular was an older white woman who always saw little black children in her room. She eventually passed and the caregiver found a letter she had written and it mentioned kids who died in a fire. Sounds like she helped start it, but okay. Boo-boolicious. Girl, I'm a CNA hospice nurse. I used to do it on the weekends. I'm a natural-born healer empath. I had an experience of an old white lady who was crying like crazy. She said there was a black young female dressed like 1920s dress. She used to tell me, did you see her? First day I didn't see her. I was tired, but the second and third day I saw this young black girl. My patient used to cry hysterically. I prayed for her, but all jokes aside, she probably did something really bad that I didn't feel that bad. That's why I stopped doing hospice. Way too much people have some heavy skeletons. Baby, I know that's right. Big dog uni. My dementia patient was hiding under the table crying, saying he's sorry for what he done to them boys. He raped them and unalived them. His family owns a funeral home, so I'm sure they cremated the bodies. Funeral home is still up and running. Andrea Lee. So at my first job as a CNA 7 years ago when I was 19, there was this white woman who after my first 2 months started screaming that there was a black man in all black that would come in her room and stand in the corner watching her throughout the day. And one day it was so bad that she was screaming that she was on fire and burning, then start asking us to put the fire out. Me and my coworkers were looking at her like, what the fuck? And this went on until she died. Well, I heard hell is hot, so there's that. Crystal, I was talking to my gran about people being met by those they once harmed, and she says they come back for them. I don't know how the fuck she did that.
Okay, guys, what did you think of those stories? Oh my goodness. Oh, just, oh my goodness. Every single one. The fireman story had me. Whew. And the ones in the hospital, all of them, to be fair, chills. And you know what? I believe every single word. No joke. The spiritual realms are real, y'all. But anyway, let me know what you think, what your thoughts, or if you've had any experiences or you know any stories, pop them down below. Thank you so much for watching and being here, and take care of yourself, guys, and join me in my next video. Bye.